This is a bolt. And if you've ever looked at a catalog, been at an automotive store, or looked online, they sometimes have like an equation in front of them. Like this one is an M6 times 1.00 times 15 millimeters. Now, when you read that, you're like, what in the world is going on? I don't know algebra. But the cool thing is that there's actually a formula to tell you the specs about this bolt. And there's a gauge that lets you check that. And if you find a random bolt in your garage sitting around, you could pick up one of these gauges and you could actually measure it for a bolt that you find. Then you could go buy one online or get it replaced. But it is a really good thing to know. So in this video, we're going to tell you about the equation, and then we're going to show you how to use this gauge. So let's get started. So way before our time, we're talking about when the English and the French and the colonies were out there. There was the metric system and the standard system and the royal system and who knows whatever systems out there. And unfortunately, the bolts weren't spared of that confusion. Now, we're going to be talking about a metric bolt, and that's why this bolt is called an M6. It's because M is for metric, and of course, 6 is going to be the diameter of the actual bolt at the bottom of the threads, or what they call a shank. Kind of, when I think about a shank, I think about a knife. I don't know if I'm like, grew up in the wrong side of a neighborhood, but that's what I think of, right? But now let me tell you what the rest of the equation means. So you've got M for metric, you have 6 for the diameter of the actual bolt at the bottom with the thread, and then you have the number 1.00. Well, that is going to be the distance between the threads. In this particular situation, it is 1 millimeter of distance between the threads. And then the last number is 15 millimeters. What does that mean? That means that this bolt from the bottom of the head on out is 15 millimeters long, which after you know all this, it makes sense. But what we're now going to show you is we're going to take this gauge and we're actually going to show you how to get those numbers, how to verify it so you could actually see this gauge in use and everything will make sense. So this is your typical bolt gauge, and we're going to just jump right into it. So we're going to start off with our equation, and I call it equation, but it's the details of the bolts, and we're with M6, so M metric, we see metric right here, and we're going to go down to 6, and we see 6 all the way down here, and we're going to put our bolt in there, and it fits in there perfectly. And just so you guys could see, if I try to put it into 5, it doesn't go in, and if I put it into 7, it's too loose, but into 6, it is perfect. Now the next number is going to be times 1.00, and that's going to be the distance in millimeters that is in between the threads. And if you wanted to find the pitch, and if you wanted to do all that fancy equation, the back of this tool right here actually has kind of an area that you could check your threads and you could verify that. Now, in my opinion, it's a little difficult to do that because you're over here just trying to look at stuff. And so I went on Amazon, actually found a kit that has the same setup, but you could actually screw it in there and make sure that you actually have the correct figure and number for the bolt that you're dealing with. And now we're going to talk about our last figure, and that's going to be the length of the bolt. Now, if you look at this cutout over here, this is actually for bolts that have heads like this, so you could actually measure them. Now, if you look at the actual numbers on here, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, and then they repeat on the right. 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. And the reason why is because you can measure bolts like that, and then you can measure your regular bolts over here. And if we remember our numbers 15, we could actually verify it right here because we have 5, 10, and 15, and that's a perfect measurement. So now we know that this is an actual M6 with a thread of 1.00 of distance, and then we have a 15 millimeter length. And if you find a random bolt out there, you do the same. Even with this one, I haven't checked it. It sits there at 6. Let's go ahead and check our length. We're going to use the other side. And our length is, this length is actually 20. So we know that's a different length. And we could actually verify that physically, that the actual bolt is a little longer. And of course, if we were checking our thread pitch, we'd come back here and we would compare it to that one and find the correct number. Now, before I made this video, I actually played with this, and I went online and I looked at every single tool that you could find out there. And the middle number is the only one that this gauge isn't really good at figuring out. But I did find a really cool tester. So I am gonna get that, make a video on it. But I hope you guys learned something because this is some really cool information. It's really nerdy. And again, we appreciate you guys watching. You take care, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.